This is for you. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heisong, coming at you live from Nashville, Tennessee this time around. Join with me, as always, down in, where are you at? You're at the Hartville Flea Market, so Hartville, Ohio this time around, Dustin.
That's right. I live in Ohio now. You don't know where you'll find me, somewhere in Ohio. But tonight, Allie, it's kind of a melancholy mood down here in Hartville as Joe Flacco is saying his final goodbyes to Cleveland. This autograph session and meet and greet was already planned prior to the Browns deciding what they were going to do with or without Flacco. And there was a line outside the building, as you can imagine. Flacco really energized this fan base, got them excited, and got us really cheering for our Cleveland Browns, and he got them to the playoffs. So I don't know if he's going to swing by. It's been brought up that he may or may not. So just guys, if you're on the show, I can't promise you anything, but if some guy that's 6'6" sets net to me, you know who it is. So
you know who it
anyway,
is.
We're down here.
Real quick, tell us about the Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market.
Yeah, guys, Allie, you grew up around these parts. Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market is a great place to come on a Saturday or any other day of the week other than Wednesday or Sunday, as I learned today. You don't come here on Wednesday or Sunday because they are closed. But also they have the hardware store and the restaurant, by the way. And if you've never been to that restaurant, it is fun. It's amazing. The food is great. But just right about an hour away from Cleveland, south, come down to Hartville Marketplace. Lots of more signings to be done here by Browns players. But just a cool place to come out and hang and shop. While the boys are getting the autographs, the ladies can go shopping and spend money in all the different stores.
Wait a minute. No, we are not going to do that. And not on this podcast that was started by a woman, by the way. Absolutely not.
True. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean.
Well, women like to shop. Women like to shop. That's
women
all
like football too. Women like football.
Yes, they do. They do. You're right.
Literally, you were talking to one.
Yes.
So you're gonna get me all red in the face, Dustin. I'm not ready to get fired up tonight. I'm not in the mood. I got
you know what I meant. It wasn't like saying because there were many women in line for.
Well, you know what I typically do in those moments is I say what I mean and I mean what I say, Dustin. Get a grip, sister. Come on. All right. So last we spoke, Dustin was live on the podcast was a couple of weeks ago. So since then, a lot has happened. NFL free agency has happened, but we also got back from our cruise. We haven't really been able to talk about that in a live setting. So kick it off. Your thoughts. You're back on land.
Well,
how you feeling?
Okay. Well, first of all, when the good Lord made me, he made me a redhead. And, we went to Jamaica and the Bahamas, and redheads, I had SPF 50 on, and somehow I still got burned. So I'm just saying I love the sun, but the sun hates me. It's all right. It's a love-hate relationship. But no, Allie, we had a lot of fun, a lot of competitions. I was on the blue team. We were the winners. Josh Cribb was very competitive. He even stopped the volleyball game to make sure the rules were being played correctly. So as you can imagine, these guys, prior to their, during their playing days and after, they're very competitive in what they do, and it was a lot of fun. But guys, it's next year, March 3rd through the 7th. We'll have some details about next year, all the great things for that cruise. It'll be 4 days next year instead of 5. But we'll tell you a lot more about that and some ways to get some special discounts and stuff. But Allie, I mean, it was your first cruise, right? You'd never been on a ship before, right? You'd never been.
I hadn't. That was the first one.
Was that David's first cruise as well?
No, he had been on a cruise before. So.
Okay. What was your favorite part? The food? Like what was your favorite part? The food? Like what was your thing?
We did actually favorite part was we did a wine tasting. It was Camus Wines. I mean, we did a wine tasting with Camus Wines. That was really cool. We did a
captain's table. So you said at the captain's table, right?
At the captain's table. That was a lot of fun. So there was a lot to offer, and we had fun just hanging out in the casino. Like that was the best. Go to dinner, go to the casino. Win some money, lose some money. win the money and then lose all the money that you just won. So that was our
right.
our week.
That's
But
right.
I'll tell you what, I had a really hard time. So when we got on the boat, I didn't get seasick at all, but I could feel, your equilibrium's
Oh,
off.
you can feel. Oh, yeah,
You
you
feel-
can.
So when we got off, I mean, for up until today, I still felt like I was on the boat. My equilibrium was
Really?
off. Oh my God, yeah.
Really?
David and I,
Okay.
we couldn't get our bearings.
Not me. I will tell you though. When we took off, and I'm sitting there like this, I'm like, oh, that's the ship getting out of Miami. Like it was interesting.
Yeah.
You felt it, and you did feel at rough seas. Us being lower on the boat. Did you feel it at night, like I did as well?
No, didn't feel it at
Okay.
night. Did
Okay.
not feel it at night.
I
It was
I felt it. I felt it more at night, and even like when we did hit rough waves, I feel like now
yeah, no, that
now
didn't happen, but
now
not closely.
I was on the back of the boat. I think you were more near the front of the boat, if
Sure.
I'm thinking right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
So I
just
mean,
very
it's fun.
interesting.
It was a lot of fun. It was a great time. Spent a week there with a lot of great guys. Got to talk to a lot of really cool people, meet a lot of really cool people. So it was a great experience. So
Yeah.
yes, stay tuned. We'll have plenty of information on how to do that next year and what that's going to look like. But I won't lie to you, Dustin. I'm happy to be back on land because holy crap. I am happy to be back. But it's been crazy. So I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee. So I apologize. I don't have my microphone. I don't have my AirPods. I am just winging it here from my laptop in my hotel room. And then I turn around tomorrow and I'm in Ohio. So it is just absolutely
So
constant. So
Ohio
just
for family, or just coming back for family, or just
yeah, we've got a couple of things planned, some wedding stuff that we got to get done. So
that's
it's
important.
just it's full go, but that's just part of it. So let's get into it. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Here in just a minute, we're going to bring David on for the medical minute, but we're going to get into the Browns free agency. Now, bear with me. You guys got to bear with me. I am traveling, and I have been traveling for the past 2 weeks. So I would like to present to you probably next week a better grasp on free agents. Now, we're going to go through the list. We're going to talk about the impact signings. We're gonna do all of that. I'm going to specifically go through and talk about the impact can play for your Cleveland Browns this upcoming season. So stay tuned for that. That's not going to happen tonight, but we are going to surface level talk about it. Some areas of need, some positions that we still feel that have some holes. So we'll talk about that. We'll preview the draft a little bit. So stick around, stay tuned. But before we even get into that, we want to tell you about our friends over at the Barley House. Dustin, why don't you fill our listeners in about the Barley House?
Yeah, guys, if you haven't been downtown, go to the Barley House and the restaurant Lost right next door. It's right there on West 6th. It's also where they do all the tailgates for the every home game for the Browns. But just a great place to take out some family. They have really great food, both at both places. But also, the best way to describe the Barley House on Lost, the restaurant next door, and the club. The Barley House is the younger crowd, and the Lost is the more sophisticated crowd that you just want to wind down and have a really nice cocktail. That's the best way to describe both places.
Yeah. All right. There you have it. Go check it out. Go check out the Barley House. Dustin, I know that you were there in Hartville, but talk to us. Joe Flacco's there before we get into it, before we bring David on, but talk to us about that. How is Joe Flacco perceived? You mentioned there's a line out the door. What's this been like?
So I got here early, and Joe showed up early. Look at that, Joe showing up early. He was doing some pre-signing stuff. He's here with his wife. You know, he's kind of. I didn't know what kind of mood he'd be in. Because he's a player that's now signed with the Saints, right? Or not with the Saints, with the Colts, right? So now he's signed with another team. But you know what? It's interesting to watch the fans take in Joe. You know what I mean? Like there's little kids here, there's family. Um, I think if anybody that's watched our podcast or in the past, the last 6 weeks of the Browns season was fun to watch, right? It was fun. It was exciting. It re-energized fans that maybe were not watching the game or watch the Browns. And it brought a lot of fans together, you know. And I think it was kind of like, and then it was over, right? And then he doesn't sign. And it was kind of like, Joe, you left us too soon. And I think that's why this was so successful tonight. Channel 8 News is down here as well doing a story. But I just think it's very interesting. Like we had them for such a short amount of time. These people want like their goodbyes, I guess is the best way to say. One last thing, Joe, thanks for making football so much fun to watch. And I got to tell you, he made it exciting. And I will tell you this: when I went out to LA, even though the Browns lost that Rams game, the way Joe Flacco on that first drive just went right down the field, and how pretty that ball he threw, I'm like, oh, well, this is different. Like I immediately, you could see it with the eyeball test. And so I think people are going to really miss him. I wish him the best of luck in Indianapolis. I think he'll do great there. If he ends up being the starter or the backup, I think he'll be an absolute great player for them. And he's just a great human being. And I think that's why a lot of these fans are here, because he is just a great human being. And he's so approachable and so nice to people.
I think he's a really good fit for what Indy's trying to do. They lose Gardner Minshew. You've got Anthony Richardson that was out for the season with an injury, a young quarterback. Man, pairing such a young, going into his second year, he's a second-year quarterback essentially, but nearly a rookie because he lost almost the entire season. Pairing him with Joe Flacco, man, that's a really good recipe. So good on the Colts for bringing him in. I think it's a really good fit. I mean, clearly, I think a lot of fans would have liked to have him back in the orange and brown, myself included, but that wasn't the case. And we've got more to talk about with Jameis and the quarterback room. It gets really interesting, so we'll talk about that. So you're right. I think a lot of fans probably wanted to come say goodbye to Joe and express their gratitude. So before we get into free agency, I want to bring David on. I want to talk about the medical minute, but really before I bring him on, what I want to mention is the Browns signed Deontay Foreman. So that's a really good signing in my opinion. Former Bears running back. So we'll talk about running back here in just a moment. But the reason that I preface with this is because we're going to talk about his ankle sprain. That's going to be kind of the context of the medical moment here with David. So before we talk about it, I just want to say, hey, if you haven't heard yet, the Browns went out and signed him. So I got to start with that one. We are going to go out on the line here. The medical moment is brought to you by our friends at Lorello.
My name's Kim Lorello, and my husband and I, Larry, started Lorello Vineyards over 21 years ago. We're a small cantina nestled in the Grand River Valley in Geneva, Ohio. Our winery consists of 2 beautiful tasting rooms, and we have 2 rooms that can transform into party rooms inside. Our menu here at Lorello's is home cooking. We have wood-fired Tuscan pizzas, paninis, salads, and several appetizers. We have award-winning wines that have won medals internationally, nationally, and locally. In the summer and springtime, we have a beautiful outdoor patio that also we have live entertainment. We also have entertainment sporadically through the entire year inside during our cool fall and winter months. Additionally, outside in the summer, we have a beautiful tent that can house several guests for a private function. We hope to see you soon, and if you want any more information on Lorello Vineyards, you can go to our website at www.lorellovineyards.com. We hope to see you soon.
All right, let's bring him on. Dr. David Ullery, orthopedic surgeon and also the light of my life, my fiance. We've got David. David, what's going on? How are we living?
Hello, Allie and Dustin. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's like I just saw you, David.
I know. Finally got to meet in person. Not that long ago.
I know, for the first time. Here's the thing.
And by the way, I want to say this to our listening audience. David is a pleasure. He is a gentleman, nice guy. I really enjoyed his company. He's a great gentleman. So I am saying that from unbiased, great guy.
I will say this with absolute bias. I agree. David, let's get into it. I mentioned the Dante Foreman signing. So I think we'll talk about that in just a moment of what that means for the Browns in the Browns running back room. I think it's a great signing. One thing to note is, was it last year? Yes, last year he had a left lateral ankle sprain. I'm speaking your language. Talk to us about what that means. And I want to talk about ankle sprains because they're so common and they can also sideline you for nearly an entire season. So I just want to learn a little bit more about it. I'll turn it over to you, David. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Allie. Great pronunciation and enunciation with your medical diagnosis there. Yeah, so I agree. I think it's a good signing. I've always been a fan of this guy. I think he's a good role player. But ultimately, yeah, it was in September of last year. He did miss one game with a lateral ankle sprain on the left side. And just kind of looking back in his injury history overall, I mean, I think it's important. I was trying to find more info on the medical evaluation process when teams sign free agents, just because, I mean, they do have to clear a physical. I imagine it's probably fairly similar to what we discussed with the combine, maybe not as extensive. It's probably more related to recent injuries and if they have anything lingering going on. But ultimately, when we are thinking about free agency and signing all these players, we have to consider their injury history as a part of it, because that's some amount of baggage that can follow them wherever they go. And so looking at Foreman's injury history in 2017, this may have been in college. Yeah, it might have been, actually, no, I think it was right at the end of college or early on in his rookie year. He tore his Achilles and missed 2 seasons because of that, up to 20 games. So we've seen that. We've talked about that on the show. It happens quite a bit. Sorry about that. I'm on call, so that's the hospital, but I'll get back to them.
No, take the call. We'll talk about Dustin Foreman. You're out of here. We'll bring it back. Text me when you're ready to go. David's on call. He can't just look at him. He's taking the call. We'll bring him back on in just a minute. But good God, talking about Dante Foreman's injury history, and I do want to get David's perspective on this. Then we'll have him back on. But Dustin, we talked about it. When a player goes out with an Achilles injury, especially a running back, the shelf life isn't great. I mean, the statistics aren't exactly positive for. Wait, did he text me? Okay, no, he didn't text me. David, just text me whenever you're ready. But it's not exactly positive for running backs with Achilles injuries. So he is probably one of the exceptions to the rules, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, he's still relatively young. What is he, 27? Does that sound about right?
Dante Foreman, yeah, he's 27.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's got quite a bit of shelf life left on him. And you're right. He's not been, because of those injuries, and we've talked about this, and we can get into this later about some of the wide receiver signings, like Ridley, who's 29, but he isn't truly 29. You know what I mean? He's not had, being smacked around in the running back position for several years. He's got an injury, but his body wear and tear at the running back position. So I think he does bring in some fresh legs to this, right? And like you said, he can really, because again, we don't know the extent of Nick Chubb. Is it week 4? Is it week 5? We just don't. 6. We just don't know. That's kind of a big question mark, right? So we don't know. So I think this is a really good signing. Again, one of those Andrew Berry's 1-year deals. He is a brilliant GM when it comes to these 1-year deals with low risk, high rewards. He does it time and time again, and he's very consistent with it. And I think he gives players an opportunity to prove themselves and possibly prove to be on the team longer.
All right, we got him back. Dr. David Ullery. David, we were just talking about the shelf life for running backs coming off of an Achilles injury. I mean, last we talked about that, I think a couple of weeks ago at this point. I mean, the statistics are not good. They're not in they don't show favor to running backs that have suffered this kind of injury. So we were saying that he is kind of an exception to that rule because he bounced back in a big way. And I didn't realize it. He's only 27 years old. So can you just talk about that a little bit and, kind of the surrounding of the injury?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. We talked about it a number of weeks ago with the Achilles injury. Also, apologies for that. Where, what is it? 25% or even more of players in general don't make it back after an Achilles tear. And for running backs, that number is even higher. And so running backs and linebackers. So he absolutely is a little bit of an exception to that rule, or one of those who has a little bit more, better healing potential. Ultimately, yeah, he was drafted in 2017. He won the 2016 Doak Walker Award at the University of Texas. And so he's still relatively young, and he's shown a great ability to bounce back. Obviously, in college, he showed that promise. And so certainly if he didn't suffer that Achilles injury, maybe we would have even heard his name more often, and he would have been potentially even a rushing leader at some point in the last 5 years. We don't know. And so we'll never know what the potential was prior to the injury, but he's at least shown an ability to bounce back and continue performing at a high level. So to go on with his injury list in 2019, he also tore a bicep tendon, and he missed the entire season because of that. But then in 2022, he had 2 foot injuries, didn't miss any game time. And in 2023, he also had a shoulder injury, but did not miss any games up until that ankle injury. So kind of circling back to ankle injuries and lateral ankle sprains. So we have to delineate the difference between a high ankle sprain and a low ankle sprain. We've talked about high ankle sprains pretty significantly in the past because that was originally what we thought Deshaun's injury was going to be until he got his shoulder looked at. And so what Foreman sustained that was a low ankle sprain. And so the difference is which ligaments are injured. Low ankle sprain is a lot more common. It's up to 90% of ankle injuries that are diagnosed, whereas high ankle is much less common. And so that low ankle sprain is what you think of when you roll your ankle, when you're out playing basketball in the back on the driveway, or when you're running track or you step off a curb and you roll your ankle. That's what we think of as a low ankle sprain, that inversion injury where your foot kind of turns in and you feel a pull on the outside of your leg or the lateral side of your leg. There's three ligaments over there. The anterior, or the AFL, CFL, and PFL are the short names for them. And typically the AFL or ATF. I'm getting my letters mixed up here. ATF. PTF, and then the CFL. So the ATF is typically the first one that's injured, and the most common one that's injured. And like any injury that we talk about or discuss, these ligaments are graded on a scale of 1 to 3, the injuries. So if you have a grade 1 injury, it's just a minor sprain, a little bit of stretching, some minor bruising, but no pain with walking. Grade 2 injuries are where there's partial tearing or a lot of stretching. You'll see a lot of swelling as well as bruising. And I mean, if you've ever seen a significant ankle sprain, kind of along the bottom border of the foot, you can see a lot of dark purple or black bruising. It looks pretty significant, almost like a fracture. But those typically have mild pain when you try to walk. And then a grade 3 is a tear of the ligament. Obviously, a lot more swelling and bruising kind of in this progression. And then there, it's almost you can't even walk with that kind of injury. Regardless of the type of injury for a low ankle sprain, it's almost unanimously treated conservatively to begin with rest, ice, compression, and elevation, or RICE, as you might have heard when you were playing competitive sports. And so that's the mainstay of treatment. These ligaments are fairly forgiving, and they do heal fairly well, even a grade 3 injury. However, if you have continued pain or instability after tear, that's where it might sometimes require surgery. So with him only missing 1 game, it was likely a grade 1 or grade 2 sprain at worst. He probably took 1 game off just to kind of reduce the pressure he was putting on the ankle. And then he probably had his ankle pretty heavily taped for the rest of the season. And in fact, he probably had his ankles taped even prior to that. I remember even in my playing days in high school, I always had my ankles taped. And I always felt like I was more prone to an ankle sprain. But it's very common for the majority of players out there just to tape their ankles to help reduce that injury pattern or inversion from happening anyway. And so, for a more severe ankle sprain, you can talk like 4 to 6 weeks for needing a full recovery to return. But those grade 1 and grade 2 injuries at most maybe need 1 or 2 games off, and then they can get back to it. And truthfully, that probably won't have many implications on his longevity or ability to be successful for the Browns this upcoming season if he does indeed make the active roster come September. Really, there's not a ton of evidence, or at least in the NFL, regarding these injuries, but I think it's because 1, they're so ubiquitous, and 2, people heal and recover from them very well. So it's a very common injury. It's something that most of us have probably had in our lives at one point or another, and it just usually takes some time to get back from. And then whether you brace it or tape it afterwards, it's usually pretty easy to recover from and get back.
I mean, he only missed 1 game, because of this, so I don't know that there's much concern, right? If you're a Browns fan, I mean, 1 game for a sprained ankle, I think a lot of people have probably done that. But I just want to talk about, could that be a lingering thing that, I know he's going to have to tape probably for every game, but is that going to make him more prone to maybe a high ankle sprain?
That's a great question. I don't think that there's necessarily literature out there describing that, or that has been kind of teased out. The mechanism for a low ankle sprain versus a high ankle sprain is different. And so it's probably not something that's going to make him more prone to having a high ankle sprain. The low ankle sprain, like I said, is where your foot turns inwards. The high ankle sprain is more associated with an external rotation, or where the toes kind of twist to the outside. And so the basic mechanism for the injury occurring is different. And so it's likely not going to lead to that. Certainly, I feel like, if you sprain your ankle once, you've probably done it 10 times. And it definitely feels like if you have a pretty bad sprain, it's likely going to happen again, and it's easier to do. People always say, oh, I have a bad ankle, or, oh, that's the one I always sprain when I play basketball. And certainly initially after the injury, he may be more likely or more prone to sprain it again. That injury was in September, I believe, and it was the only game he missed due to that injury, at least according to the fantasy doctors here that I'm looking at. And so it at least didn't cause any problems the rest of the season for him. And so my thought is that, especially with the offseason now and then getting back in the training camp, he may have a mild sprain here or there, but I really wouldn't expect it to pose any threat to his playing time significantly in the upcoming season.
All right. Well, that's interesting. I think, oftentimes when we hear ankle sprain, it's almost like a calf injury. Like, well, how long is this going to take? And sure, you could miss 5 games or you could miss no games. So I wonder how many of these are just people, players suffering through it. So it's good to learn a little bit more about it. And I'm sure it will become relevant again as we approach the season. We'll discuss it once more. Dustin, you got anything else for Dr. David Ellery tonight?
No. Again, excellent analysis of high ankle, low ankle sprains. I think I will say this, David, since we have added the medical moment to the show, I think you give a very different perspective that other shows don't in regards to, and I use the example, they'll put a doctor out there that'll say, yep, he's out for 6 to 8 weeks. And then that's all we hear. Right. And that's the only analysis you get until he's called up off the injured list or the injury reserve. Right. So I think you give a great perspective, and I think a lot of people enjoy your content in that space.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. And it's a lot of fun for me, and it's pretty cool to be able to do it with my fiance. So I'm not complaining. I'm happy to come back whenever you guys want me to.
Well, no, I was just saying, I guess I'll say a little bit more on that. I've had people come out to me and say, oh, I really like that segment you've added where we can actually hear about injuries and understand them more than just, the vanilla answers that you kind of get, like, hey, he's out, and then that's it. And you don't hear that anymore. And I think people really appreciate that there's more detail to what the rehab and what that looks like for somebody coming back, and when they may come back, right? Because sometimes they don't even tell you anything until he's on the active roster that week. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I'm a fan, just like you guys and all of the followers are, and so I want to know about these guys and hope that they get back as quickly as anybody else does. And so it's nice to combine 2 passions of mine into one here with football and orthopedics. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be on the show and look forward to next week.
I love it.
You said that incorrectly, David, so I'll give you one chance to correct what you were saying. You have 2 passions, orthopedics and football. I think you should have 3. So
combine my 3 passions: orthopedics, football, and Allie, of course.
Okay, it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
By the way, David, she is on fire tonight. So
just doing what I do. All right, David, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. Go Browns.
Go Browns.
All right, that is the medical moment brought to you by our friends over at Lorello Vineyards. That is Dr. David Ellery. Before we move on to free agency, just want to tell you guys about our friends over at K&D Property Group. Whether it is sophisticated suburban living, luxury downtown digs, or senior housing, K&D, the largest property management company in Northeast Ohio, has a perfect home for everyone. K&D is your one-stop shop for housing in the region with apartments and amenities for everyone, including residential, commercial, retail, and also corporate housing. Find your dream home at K&D. Visit knd.com to get started. That's the letter K, the word, and the letter D.com. Dustin, I'd like to kick it off here with the quarterback room, right? We don't bring back Joe Flacco. So currently the quarterback room for your Cleveland Browns is as follows. You have Deshaun Watson, and then you've also got DTR on the roster. By the way, they bring in Jameis Winston. You think it's done there? You're wrong, because they also bring in Tyler Huntley. I was very surprised by that. It's not that I don't like it. I was just surprised by it. I did not expect it. Your thoughts on, let's talk about both Jameis and on Tyler Huntley here.
I'm going to be full honest here. I was like, I understood the Winston signing.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Huntley signing. I love it. Not only do you go and get a spy, get an enemy or a spy from one of your other teams, I think he is almost all of what Lamar Jackson is. And I'm shocked that the Baltimore Ravens didn't bring him back. I think he's like 75% of what, Lamar Jackson is in a game. And Allie, you know this, we've played Huntley in football games, and he gave us fits, and he gives a lot of players fits. And, he was an alternate, but he even made a Pro Bowl. I think this quarterback is capable, and I think he's underrated. And again, I think the Browns got a steal with this player. I think he can be capable, and he's got a lot of starts under his belt. But I'm excited about the Huntley. Winston, I understand he's got the mechanics and the type of run pass similar to Deshaun Watson. But I was really excited about the Huntley signing. And I was like you, I was surprised, but I was very excited.
75% of Lamar Jackson, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
All right. So I guess my question is, where does he fit in on the depth chart, right? Like, who's the odd man out? Because do you think going into this season that they're going to have 4 active quarterbacks on the roster? It was a week or 2 ago, Dustin, that we said, look, yes, the Browns are going to, the NFL is making a pivot in terms of active quarterbacks on the roster. We said 3 is kind of the way to go. The Browns have been burned. We know how this is. Now there's 4 currently. Now I know it's quite a long off season, but who makes the team, right? Is it all 4? Is it 3? Is it 2? What does this look like? What do you think?
Well, let me ask you this. In your research, do many football teams carry 4 quarterbacks? Is that pretty okay?
No.
So I hate to maybe say this, but I think DTR is the odd man out. And I wouldn't have said that 6 or 8 months ago, but based just on experience and games played and where you need it. And here's the truth. We learned very quickly last year when a PJ Walker or a DTR goes in a game, how much of a fall off that was in the quarterback position, right? As from a starting position for the Browns and the offense. You bring someone like Winston or Huntley in, yes, you're going to have a drop off, but I like it. And again, I think DTR, unfortunately, could be the odd man out. Now, we drafted him late. Maybe we trade him to another team and he gets an opportunity. But if I'm looking at the roster today, I think he's the odd man out. That's my gut and paper and experience of these quarterbacks.
I don't know. I think because of the draft capital that was spent on DTR and what he displayed this year, it's a high ceiling. We know what Tyler Huntley is, right? I think you have probably a better grade on him than everybody else. Most people. You think he's 75% of Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP. Now, I'm not saying he's not good. He's got it. He's beat the Cleveland Browns. We know who he is. But
he's beat other AFC teams too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I say that they probably give the nod to DTR because of the potential upside. Could he become, the next starter in the league? I think the jury's still out, right? Wasn't given a fair shot this year. He got injured when he was playing well. So just a really weird season for him. And then Tyler Huntley, I think does he make the team or is it a practice squad signing or do they move somebody ultimately this offseason? So no, I do not think that they will carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster. I think it's borderline controversial for a lot of teams to carry 3, let alone 4. So I was just very surprised to see that. Not because I think that I was surprised to see the player. I just was surprised to see another quarterback signing.
And here's the thing. I think because the way the NFL changed the rules a little bit with quarterbacks and how they can maneuver those around because of what happened in that NFC Championship game a couple years ago, I think it may become more of a common thing, honestly, to have 3 quarterbacks on your roster. Because let's just look at what happened last year in the National Football League, right? Look at all the quarterbacks that went down. It was like a list, and we're talking it was a list that went down, right? There were a lot of great quarterbacks that went down. And teams are kind of looking around in the room and like, oh, whoa, we got a problem here, right? We don't have that depth. And so I think maybe teams are getting smarter. Maybe the Browns are maybe leading on that curve of trying to think maybe you should have 3 quarterbacks based on what they had to deal with last year. Ultimately starting 5 quarterbacks, more than any team that ever made a playoff run. So I think, I'm okay with 3 quarterbacks, quite honestly, on a
I
team,
think
as long as you're not paying astronomical amounts of money for those other two quarterbacks, right?
Well, I mean, the Browns quarterback situation is a very real thing, and the amount of money that they're paying is a very real thing. So it'll be curious to see what that looks like as we approach training camp and into the season. So that's the quarterback situation. They bring back Zadarius Smith on a 2-year deal to return to the Cleveland Browns. He played a key role for the Browns on the defensive line. I thought he was great. He had 5.5 sacks last year. But I think that pairing him with Myles Garrett, they also bring back Shelby Harris. From what you have seen there, I think that's absolutely a really good sign to bring him back. More of a splash free agent signing, and I won't say splash because it really wasn't a splash, but a 2-year deal. They bring in Jordan Hicks, the former Vikings linebacker, on a 2-year deal for the Cleveland Browns. Luciano Takitaki and Evan Walker Jr. You have a really big hole at the linebacker position, so they bring in Jordan Hicks. I mean, he's had 100+ tackles in 5 straight seasons, playing for both the Cardinals and Vikings previously. I mean, he's going to come in and kind of fill that leadership role. I think he's going to be a good fit. Now, I don't think this is the ultimate answer at linebacker. I am of the belief, and you know this, listeners, that they need to address the linebacker position heavily. Like, I think that is something that's been lacking over the past couple of years. But look, I think that this is a really good signing. Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, I like it. Again, somebody that Stefanski is familiar with, knows his type of play. Again, didn't break the bank, right? Again, it's nice, one of those signings that can kind of fill in. I actually think we upgraded a little bit at linebacker in this situation. I think we still have to fill some needs there.
Yes.
But based on some of the players that we brought in, I think we got a little better. Full transparency. Because you always hear Andrew Berry, every day when I wake up, I'm trying to make the Cleveland Browns a little better, right? I'm always trying to find those nuggets and all those pieces and parts. And I really think this is one of those signings that, Andrew Berry looked at it and said, hey, if this guy has to go, can we bring this guy in? And oh my gosh, that actually might be a little bit of an upgrade, right? And, maybe the same price. So I think this is one of those signings where Andrew Berry kind of looks under every rock and every place in the NFL to find these valuable players that he can bring in, and they can bring immediate value to the team.
Yeah. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste is beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition, and it's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. A couple others here. Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of that, Allie, the first 30 people at Hartville today got free mustard. And guess what? They were just running out of here with it. So everybody got free mustard. So every time we do an event, and by the way, guys, mustard will be there. It's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee. That's the new tagline. Mustard will be there. It's a guarantee. The Browns re-signed Corey Bojorquez, the punter, for another 2 years. I think this is a great move. Look, Corey Bojorquez, I think when he signed with the Cleveland Browns, there was a lot of skepticism, right, of who he is, and he wasn't that good in Green Bay. Wrong. He was one of the better punters in the league. And by the way, he's only 27. So I think this is a really good signing, bringing him in for a 2-year deal. Maurice Hurst, we didn't mention, but adding to that defensive line, or, he was already on the defensive line, but re-signing him to return to the defensive line on a 1-year deal. He was huge last year. Now, we do lose Jordan Elliott. He comes in, and I think that, if you can give Siaka Ika maybe a little bit more of a role and see what he can do this season, pairing him with Mo Hurst, who I absolutely loved this past season. Man, I'm excited to see him back in the brown and orange. What do you think?
Yeah, I think these are all good quality players. I don't think they're done, though. Do you think they're done? I feel like the Browns are still going to bring in some other players. I just feel like there's value out there now in some of these free agents that are still out there. So I was trying to think, there was a player that just got signed the other day to a 1-year deal, a defensive tackle, and it was like, man, he was out there for a long time before somebody took him. But I don't think Andrew Berry's done, to be quite honest.
No. He's never done. This is a constant thing, and this is just the early part of the off season. So no, he's not done. He's going to make other moves that make sense. For example, they bring in Devin Bush. Let's talk about that, to the linebacker room and what that means. Who he was in Pittsburgh early on in his career, he was very good. suffered some injuries. Wasn't so good. They get rid of him. He goes to Seattle. He basically did nothing. So former first round pick. We know that Andrew Berry loves those guys. I think that this falls into that same category, right? They're giving a shot to another kind of somebody that struggled, a first round pick that struggled. And I mean, hell, you can say the same about Mo Hurst, right? I mean, he was a proven player coming out of Michigan, and he fell in the draft. No fault of his own, but fell in the draft, was given another opportunity, and he's made the most of it. So, do I think that solves the problem? Well, no, of course not. But I'm curious by the signing. I'm curious to see how that plays out because there still could be some upside in who he is and what he brings to the table. They do bring in Quentin Jefferson from the Jets on a 1-year deal on the defensive line. No, Dustin, they are not done adding there. Let's talk about running backs. So we know that Nick Chubb could potentially be back at the start of the season, but also could potentially not be back at the start of the season. So we don't know what that looks like. We'll continue to talk to David about it as he progresses through his recovery. But they do bring in Dante Foreman out of Chicago. And I mean, we know who he is as a player. He was fairly explosive, especially in the red zone. I mean, he averaged almost 4 yards a pop. I mean, pretty decent player. Is he running back one? No, but decent to have in the rotation. They also bring in Nyheim Hines, the running back, former Buffalo Bill, former Indianapolis Colt, 1-year deal up to $3.5 million. Again, is he running back one? No, but you need depth at that position, especially without Nick Chubb. So Nick Chubb does not start week 1, week 2, week 3, whatever. You have kind of a running back by committee in Jerome Ford, Nyheim Hines, and Dante Foreman. Your thoughts on the running back situation, Dustin?
I like it. And again, I mean, you brought up Bush, and these are the guys, all these 1-year deal that kind of Andrew Berry puts out there, makes them, somewhat, affordable, but also gives them, some money to prove themselves and see if they can, ink another deal. I like these deals because it gives it kind of a proven deal, and it gives a new fresh start to some of these players. I like it. And I like again, it reminds me a little bit of three, maybe 4 years ago when kind of Kareem was with his, probably the high point in his point of his, when he was coming back with the Browns and the newness, right? That 1-2 punch with Chubb. You always got to have fresh legs in the National Football League at running back. And we are a run division, right? And we haven't even got into this, but my God, I have to look at Derrick Henry now with the Ravens. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous that we have to put up with that now. But, he's up there, but he's still Derrick Henry. But again, we have to go up against those type of opponents in the AFC North where we have to control the clock, right? And by the way, you do need fresh legs that come in the third and fourth quarter. And you need guys like this. When Nick Chubb or whoever is the starting running back has ran it 20 sometimes, right? You need some guys that can come in and give you fresh legs and wear down a defense and win you a football game. So I love these signings. I think these just go to show that we're going to stick to the run and stick to it. And it's still going to be a big part of our offensive game plan going forward.
I mean, that's the identity of the Cleveland Browns, and it always has been. And even without Nick Chubb, that was still the focus, was running the ball. Now, they didn't do it well last year. They did not execute it at the rate that you would hope that they would. But a lot of that plays on the depth, and a lot of that plays also on the offensive line. So because of that, they go out, they get Hakeem Adeniji out of Minnesota, former Viking, on a 1-year deal. Look, they are shoring up this offensive line. You got Jedrick Wills coming back off of injury, DeJuan Jones coming back off of injury, Jack Conklin coming back off of injury. Adeniji, he's going to be your swing tackle kind of guy that can step in, do what he needs to do, and he can be serviceable. I still think you probably need another. I'd like to draft a tackle at some point. I think you have to have it. I didn't love what you saw from James Hudson last year. There's some question marks there, but he can be a swing, a tackle, a depth tackle kind of guy like that. He brings versatility to the line. He can play guard. He can play tackle. He can kind of do it all. So you have to shore that up. And I think that the Browns, Dustin, were burnt last year. I mean, offensive line, quarterback, running back. We saw what that was, and it wasn't great. They bring back James Prochet, the receiver, more of a special teams guy. They bring him back on
I like that.
Yeah. Michael Dunn, the offensive guard, he's brought back as well. So curious to see, what that means for him. Giovanni Ritchie, the tight end out of Carolina. He's got a 1-year deal with Cleveland. You lose Harrison Bryant to the Raiders. So I don't think he is the answer long term. I'm sure that they go out and they either bring somebody else in or they draft somebody. But just to speak on the depth of what that tight end position group looks like currently, with Njoku, Jordan Akins, and now Giovanni Ricci. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like, because right now he's more of a pass catcher than a block end. And I think that you kind of need that, right? You need somebody that can do both. So I think that's still an area of need. And then last but not least is Tony Brown, the corner, former Indianapolis Colt, brought in on a 1-year deal. So you lose Mike Ford to the Texans, so you bring in Tony Brown. But Dustin, I want to turn it over to you for your thoughts there on Giovanni, Tony Brown, and bringing back James Prochet and Michael Dunn.
Yeah, bringing those guys in. I do think, obviously with Bryant leaving, we had to address obviously the tight end position. I don't think they're going to be done though. We'll get into this for another show. I think we're going to address the tight end position. I'm assuming in the draft. I think we're going to probably draft a tight end. I don't know where in the draft we may do that, but I think we need to address that. But again, I like these signings. Again, it's just part of that depth that we always talk about with the Cleveland Browns. We said on this podcast 4 years ago and said, "Oh my gosh, if so and so is not playing, who's the next guy? Because I don't know, right?" And I think this last year we were decimated with injuries, one of the worst in the league. So doing these 1-year deals with these guys, I think, just helps solidify the entire team. But again, I don't, like you said before, I don't think he's done. But I like these signings because again, I can't say enough. These are low risk, high reward signings, right? You're not breaking the bank. We haven't even got into Jerry Jeudy. That's
Right.
another signing.
That's next up.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that have happened to the Browns. We go on a cruise and it's like we barely have cell service, and we're like, oh, all these things are happening with the Browns. But they're pretty active. But no, these are good. These were good signings. I like them.
Yeah. So you mentioned it. He was next up on the list, and we probably should have started with Jerry Jeudy, right? They not only trade for Jerry Jeudy, but they also assigned him to a 3-year, $58 million extension. Let's just get your overall thoughts. I want to start first and foremost with the trade and adding him to the wide receiver room. What that looks like for you, because I still think you have to have a receiver, a young receiver, because we didn't see it necessarily out of Tillman last year. You still need some answers there. And then I want to talk about the contract, because that's another conversation. So let's kick it off.
Yeah. So here's the thing. He's what, 26, 25? He's very young still. He's going right into the prime of his career.
24.
What? Yeah, 20. Yeah, sorry, he's young. So again, he fits the Andrew Berry guardrails, right, from a standpoint of when you sign a guy and he goes on. But here's the truth. I think this kid's got a lot of potential. I really do. And I just think for whatever reason, it was a bad fit. You had a new coach come in. I think, again, I'm not saying he's going to be Amari Cooper, but I think a new landscape and a new place. And by the way, someone he's looked up to and idolized since he was in college, Amari Cooper. I think this is a match made in heaven for these two. I think he could very easily be wide receiver number 2. I think the potential is there. The contract, I think, is 40-some million guaranteed over 3 years, a little under $60 million. But I like the signing, but I really like that he's going right into the prime of his career. More than importantly, that's to me what I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, look, he's 24 years old. He fits the age guardrails. The age guardrails are there for the second contract. Andrew Berry likes these young guys coming out of college. That way, by the time they hit their second contract, they're 24, 25 years old. So it does fit the guardrails there. They signed him to a 3-year, $58 million deal. 41 million of that is guaranteed. So I don't know. I think that there's question marks here. He's 25. He's got a ton of potential. I don't disagree with that. He had 54 receptions for 758 and 2 touchdowns last season. Now, that environment, the Broncos were weird. Russell Wilson's situation was weird. Like, I get it. I totally get it. But, that's a lot of money for somebody that had 2 touchdowns last year. And I think that receiver is it has been a big question mark. Sure, they go out and Elijah Moore. Sure, they make a great trade for Amari Cooper. But by the way, Cooper and Elijah Moore, they will both be in the final years of their contract at the start of the season. So there are question marks. And I still think that receiver is not – it's still it's still there's a hole in the roster, and I think
Yeah.
that you're banking on Cedric Tillman being better. He has to be better. He has to be better than he was last year. Pre-snap penalties, pre-snap issues can't happen. The
Yeah.
potential's there, but you have to have it. But when you look at it on paper, sure, it adds up. It looks great, and I think he's going to be a solid receiver, assuming that he can just kind of fit into the mold of what they need him to be. I mean, he's got the talent. That's not it. And he's going to have a decent quarterback throwing at him. So if everything kind of comes together, I think it's a great signing. But I can also see the hesitation on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tillman definitely needs to. We need to see progress with Tillman this year. We need to see that speed, that route running that we know that he is capable of. And in addition, I think we really need to see Mari Cooper just to continue doing what he does, right?
Yeah.
And then also, of course, you know, it'll be interesting to see how this wide receiver room goes, right? Again, I do think maybe they address it in the draft again, right? They try to find maybe a speedy guy. I don't know. That didn't work out for us so well with Schwartz, but maybe they need to find a burner kind of guy to kind of put in this lineup. But again, I agree. There is still a hole in this wide receiver room, and I think they definitely need to put that out there and get it done. And more importantly, the draft, I think.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up with this one. Mike Vrabel is a coach for the Cleveland Browns. He's on the coaching staff. That took me by surprise. Didn't expect to see that at all. And David and I forget where we were. He's on his phone. He says, "Hey, something just happened with the Browns, and you're gonna like it." And I said, "Okay, what?" Like he goes, "Oh, it's a coaching hire." I said, "Is it Belichick?" And he's like, "No." And then he said it was Vrabel. I'm like, "Well, that's insane. I did not expect that to happen." So let's talk about that briefly. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, here's the thing. We get a guy that. So, by the way, I actually asked some of the players on the boat about this, bringing someone like that into the locker room and what they truly thought about that in regards to that. And guess what? They loved it. They think this. They said this guy is a player's coach. Players love him. They respect him. And guess what? The Titans are paying him. So he's basically, we get him for free with all that knowledge. He's going to be a head coach somewhere again, or a defensive coordinator or something, somewhere in this league. He's going to be coaching again soon. I pretty much believe that. But
Yeah.
the fact that he can come in and just kind of be that consultant in the room, the calming guy that can really help this coaching staff even more, right? I mean, the experience of a Stefanski and Vrabel in a room, that's a lot. I mean, to have, and by the way, if you make the playoffs, man, that's a great guy to have on the sidelines, right? That can be that calming presence and, really be that rah-rah guy for the football players. I love it. And the fact that we don't have to pay for it, and the fact that it was told that he was down there with Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and those guys at the combine tells me this was in the making maybe for a while, and that he's already been out there helping us scout for the draft. So I am a-okay with this.
I mean, I love it. Yeah. You mentioned having Stefanski and Vrabel in a room. You know what? You know what makes me excited is Vrabel and Jim Schwartz in a room. I think that's a ton of energy. I mean, look, a lot of people want Kevin Stefanski to be that rah guy. You don't get that, out of him, and
Right.
that's just who he is. But I mean, you bring in Jim Schwartz, you bring in Mike Vrabel, you're going to get that one way or another. So you're going to have the intensity, you're going to have that, you're going to have the experience, the leadership, because you're not wrong. He will be coaching very, very soon in the National Football League. I mean, he just is. And what do you think when we talk about his role as a consultant? Pretty much it's just to be a resource for this coaching staff, for Kevin Stefanski, also probably for Jim Schwartz, just to be a resource and provide insight. Like he can be used in a variety of different ways. The term consultant is very, very vague. We don't exactly know what that means. Every consultant in the National Football League probably serves a different purpose in a different role. So we're not entirely sure what this is going to look like for Vrabel and the Browns over the course of the season, but nonetheless, it's exciting, and I think it's a positive move nonetheless.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, we know this. Coaches eat, live, and breathe football games, right? I mean, that's exactly what they do. And if you think about this, just what he can add from a prep for football games, I think gives the Browns an advantage, right? Here's a guy that's going to be prepping for football games along helping those game plans, these assistant coaches and all that goes into that week. I mean, think about it. Here you have a guy, McVay of the Rams, said Myles Garrett kept him up all night. He's the head coach. He's not even the defensive coordinator of that football team. So you know how much goes into these detailed plans for a football game starting on Monday after that Sunday game. I think that's where that kind of stuff, if he does stay on the staff through the season, will be invaluable in my opinion, if he stays on through the entire season.
Yeah, I think it's a great hire. Nonetheless, it was one that was surprising to me. There's been a couple of signings and hires that I said, well, didn't see that coming, and that was certainly one of them. All right, Dustin, what else we got? You got anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, guys, if you are in the greater Cleveland area, come out to Massillon, Ohio. By the way, the birthplace of Paul Brown and coaching in high school started all right there. We're going to be out there Friday night at the B-Dubs in Massillon with the Massillon Browns backers. Frank Menifee will be there. Hanford Dixon will be there. And also Felix Wright. So we're going to do a signing, $20 for anybody that comes out. $20 is all it is to come out, get all their autographs signed. We'll be giving away a $100 gift card from our friends at Circle K. Lots of prizes. A lot of people are coming out. I'm excited to see the fans. I think it's going to be a great turnout right out here in your backyard, Allie, in Massillon, Ohio.
Yeah, it is. It is right in my backyard.
By the way, Allie, I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying. I love Cleveland, but I get excited to go out and find these small communities. I mean, it's like a whole new experience for me, right? Like I was telling you, I think it's Solon, Ohio, down where Stadium Mustard or Hudson, Ohio. That is the coolest little town, and like all those really old historic buildings. Ohio's got a lot of cool history, and I'm just an American history buff. I don't know if you know that about me. I love American history, so to see some of this old architecture and kind of geek out, I love it. It's fun to go do that.
Really cool. That's gonna be exciting. So go check that out, the Massillon at B-Dubs. Here's a quick word before we wrap up from our friends over at Circle K.
Approval only.
Circle K's new free Inner Circle membership program is all about making it easy to reward you with the things you'll love. Sign up and save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. Plus, get every 6th free on a tasty selection of Circle K products. We're talking piping hot pizza, fresh coffee, ice-cold fountain drinks, and more. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
And there you have it.
Allie, you recognize this guy?
Right look at that guy. Look at that guy. What is going on?
Before I say anything else, congratulations.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Happened to a better person.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Look at him.
You know what Ray had to do? He had to get his door signed or a piece of his car.
Yeah.
That's why he was down here. As you know, he's got how many autographs do you have on that thing now?
About close to 60.
60 autographs on this car.
Unbelievable. That's a lot. That's a lot. Ray does it right. He's going on. Well,
by the way, it's Here We Go Brownies Ambassador Ray.
Oh, look at that. Official title.
Official
I like it. Well, you guys go have fun. Good seeing you, Ray.
Yeah, we're out of here.
Yeah,
we're tearing down. We got to tear it down. Yeah.
I'm in Nashville. I got stuff to do. I got to go eat dinner. So thanks for tuning in.
By the way, Allie, Nashville is on my list this year. I want to get to Nashville. I've never been. It's on my bucket list. I love country music, but I want to get out to Nashville for a weekend. So
yeah, you should. It's a great time. It is a great time. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.